Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, depending on where you're watching this forum from. So today we're actually kickstarting the business show with the first forum on international employability and green skills. But before we get started, I would like to just do a round of introductions. So I will start. My name is Gamu Matarira, and I am the chair for this particular forum. I'm also the founder and CEO of Gen A Consultancy, and my personal interest in employability and green skills, well, it's a theme that runs through my entire business of consulting, coaching and training, working with SMEs from international SMEs who are looking to enter into the African landscape through strategic partnerships, as well as working with local leaders in Africa with their local initiatives and making sure that they're sustainable in the process. So I am joined today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by such diverse speakers and business leaders from all over the world. And I'm going to just go in order according to who's on my screen and ask you to please introduce yourselves briefly. I will start with Zahir Nasser. Please go ahead, Zahir.
Hi, thank you so much, Gamu, and thank you for having me today. It's definitely a pleasure to be part of this discussion. My name is Zahir Nasser. I'm the managing partner and co-founder at a health technology company based in Abu Dhabi called Doctory Connect. And we work on making lifestyle and functional medicine accessible to the local population here in the UAE. I also run a number of consultancies aimed at supporting startups, particularly in the tech space in this region, either come to market or develop their idea and grow it out from this market. So we're definitely seeing a lot in terms of new age skills needed to support this ecosystem, and happy to share my knowledge with all of you and learn from you all on this panel today.
Great to have you. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Zahir. John, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Gamu, for having us today. My name's John Harris. I'm the International Education and Business Development Lead for the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. So we are a professional body that's over 100 years old, started in the UK, and now operates in over 40 countries across the world through around about 120 training partners that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So that's me. Thank you.
Excellent. Great to have you, John. Hayden, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, Gamu. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Hayden Milton-Green. I'm representing our company, Synergy GRC. I'm a director there. I basically specialize in sustainability and environment, social governance. And I'm passionate about taking people along the journey and making the world sustainable. So I'm excited to be participating.
Amazing to have you on board. Hi, Christian.
Hey, Gamu. Thanks very much for having me on. Hello, everyone. So I'm Christian Williams. I'm the Business Development Manager at Here's the Plan based in Scotland. We specialise in energy, and I particularly specialise in sustainability, much like Hayden, looking to help SMEs in the UK move towards a more sustainable future and developing route maps on how they can achieve that for their businesses.
Brilliant. Great to have you, Christian. Vicky, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon on my side of the planet. I'm Vicky Numalo, the founder and executive director of Girls and STEM Trust. So we're an education nonprofit. We work with young girls and women to get them into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. By profession, I'm a digital transformation consultant working with educational organizations to get them to digitally transform in the easiest possible way. And so that's what I'm doing out here in Zimbabwe. It's such a pleasure to meet all of you, and yeah.
Great. Thank you, Vicky. Looking forward to hearing your perspective from Zimbabwe as well. David, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, please? Sorry, David, we can't hear you. David's having sound issues, it seems. No, still can't hear you, unfortunately. Okay, whilst we're waiting for David, we have a couple of guests on the call. Jack and Michael, do you want to share with us who you are and what your interests are in this particular panel?
Should I go first? Yeah, I'll go first.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it, Jack.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jack. I work for the University of West of England, so we're based in Bristol. We are delivering a number of green skills projects for SMEs. So yeah, we're working with a whole range of industries, sectors, sizes to support them with kind of developing or working towards kind of net zero goals, that kind of stuff, and utilising all of the kind of academia that we have in the background, working in those areas as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jack. And thanks for joining us. Michael, do you want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in this panel? Or not? Okay, that's all right. David, how are we doing? Okay, David is having some issues. So I don't know, just in the meantime, do you want to just put it in the chat for us? Just put your details in the chat and I will tell everyone on your behalf. So David is actually sitting in Japan at the moment. Okay, and we have somebody else joining us. So, but David has got a lot of experience between Japan and Benin. Is that right, David, where he's originally from? And he's working with, I can't remember the name of the organization, unfortunately, but I know you're working with a lot of youth programs where you get a lot of African youth to come over to Japan to work through some innovative projects that they can then apply back into their countries in Africa. So hopefully we'll get you back on the mic because I know you'll do a much better job of introducing your work to us. Mwiche, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody, please?
Hello, everyone. Mwiche here from Zambia. Yeah, that's pretty much, I don't know, what else?
Just tell us, who you're working with and what you're going to bring to the table today, from which angle you will be participating today.
Okay, I'm coming on board from Zilas Events and Marketing Company. Yes, and like I mentioned last time, I'm speaking on behalf of the company and some of the projects that we've lined up in line with the green skills. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us, Mwiche.
You're welcome.
Great. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to set the context for our discussion today. And yes, and let's just get straight into it. So according to the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, 50% of employees will need reskilling by 2025 to adopt technology increases. So understanding that businesses across the globe face similar issues and looking at how different countries think about employment and skills is important as we examine the sector. So in a globally connected age, we look beyond national boundaries for businesses to fill skills gaps and for candidates to build careers. Brexit in the UK and international political thinking is constantly changing the employment landscape of both employers and candidates. So our International Employment Forum today thinks about opportunities for businesses and job seekers amidst the double disruption of the economic effects of the pandemic and increasing automation, which is transforming jobs. So our very first question for the panel, how has the world of work changed? Let's just talk about how the world of work has changed. John, would you like to kickstart that one?
Okay, so there's a long answer, everybody, and there's a short answer. The short answer is absolutely tremendously. Not just because of the pandemic. It's important that everybody engaged in this debate understands the difference between what I would call forced disruption because of the pandemic and the knock-on effect that has happened. But also some of the issues that were bubbling under the surface anyway. And what has happened is the pandemic has almost caused them to come to the surface. it's a bit like taking a pill. You know, there's symptoms sat there, and it's not until you actually take the pill, see what happens, that some of the symptoms actually come to the surface and you can start to treat it. So we've noticed this. If I give an example from the transport and logistics sector, supply chain was something that everyone kind of yawned about before the pandemic. It wasn't something that every household talked about. It certainly wasn't on the news channels of every country. I think everyone now is probably a supply chain expert. Everyone's been forced to kind of rethink their personal lifestyle, how they get stuff delivered to their homes. Everyone has had to take on board some logistics decision making. And what we've seen behind that is a number of things happening. Globalization, and particularly within the world of education and training, the most resilient partners we had just went straight online. They captured the market. They just kept going, and by cooperation around assessment and other things, we were able to support. The other thing we saw is that it made shortages, skill shortages, much more acute. So there is a global shortage of drivers. There's also a global shortage of the right drivers with the right skills in the right place. So we've seen things like Australia, people emigrating on temporary visas to be drivers in Australia. Obviously in Australia, some of the vehicles that are driven are like those big lorry trains. And what you've seen is people that haven't had that advanced training then come in, are legally able to drive, get behind the wheel, and then we see, you know, incidents of road accidents and things going up. Not only that, in the country they come from, well, who's backfilling them? And do they have the requisite skills to do things safely? There are lots of industries that you could map that to. And I think, you know, we're out of the box now, Gamu, aren't we? And if we weren't a global economy and we weren't globally linked before, we now certainly are. And no one on this panel can put that lid back on. No. What we have to do is go with a brave new world solution.
I like that, a brave new world. Vicky, I see you nodding. What would you like to add to what John has just shared with us?
And I think John has just done a brilliant job. I mean, I would just like to add, obviously without delving too much into the ripple effects of 4IR, is the fact that the world does require employers and employees to come to terms with the fact that, one, this is a new global environment, and the fact that we now need to be more flexible and adaptable had grown accustomed to. So these are things such as job security, long-term employment, you know, working in a structured sort of environment, and, you know, the usual standardization of roles and responsibilities. So once we understand this, then fundamentally, we will be in a position to understand that, oh, sorry, something is rubbing against my mic, that we will be fundamentally in a position to understand that the trends that are changing the structure of talent and work are highlighting the fact that technology is creating a lot of jobs that it is taking away. So that's something that's really, really important, and I picked that up from John's contributions earlier.
Thank you, Vicky. Hayden, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's why I enjoy these panels is because it brings together these different thought processes. You know, let's look at what hasn't changed, and then we look at what changed. So what hasn't changed, you still have entrepreneurs. You need to be an entrepreneur, a manager, or a technician. You know, so then now let's look at what has changed and whether we can look at that again. You know, COVID has leapfrogged us into the digital world. You know, we were going slowly into that, and then all of a sudden everyone jumped off the cliff, and now we're in the digital world. And as John said, you can't take that back. Yeah. But what that has changed is, what is the workplace? You know, we can ask questions. So what is a workplace? And then also define what's protectionism, what's local employment, because we're digital now. So define what local is. You know, it's quite interesting. And then obviously COVID and this panic around the pandemic, which is justified, but it's hidden the biggest issue of our time, which is climate change, which is changing the job space even more. Everyone transitioned into the digital world because of COVID, but they were still in the same jobs. But with climate change, we're looking at a whole lot of different things. And one of those is we really need to look at transdisciplinary thinking, transdisciplinary education, integrated thinking, creativity, and then what was mentioned before is resilience. So hopefully those themes keep coming up through this process.
Absolutely agree with you, Hayden. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, isn't there? Christian, what do you think? How do you think the world of work has changed from your perspective?
I think for me, I haven't been in it awfully long, so the change has been slightly less massive for me. In terms of digitalization, coming out of school, coming out of uni, these sorts of things, first jobs, coming into the workplace, it was more and more becoming a conversation. We work in all over the UK, but I'm aware that the people here today that work all over the world, and to do that, you need tech and you need to be digital. So for our company and for a lot of the companies we work with, the transition wasn't so much moving to being digital. It was more adjusting to how do you manage a workforce that you don't see as often, and how do you communicate with them. And as Hayden said, in Scotland we just had COP26, which we thought was going to be greatly impacted by COVID, but there were still tens of thousands of people in Glasgow on the days of the events, and I was lucky enough to be there, and it felt very normal. So it's really strange. It seems to be day by day. It depends on where you are and what events you attend, how we've been impacted, and that makes it difficult to really make a plan of how to go forward when things seem to change depending on where you are and who.
Yeah, it's definitely very fluid and context specific, isn't it? So as you're pointing out, in some ways it may seem normal, but in other ways we know that it's so much has actually completely changed. So here, from a UAE perspective.
Yeah, so I can definitely resonate with everything that all have shared prior, especially with what Christian kind of said as well, in that, from our perspective as entrepreneurs in the tech space, we were already working remotely. We already had contractors in the Philippines, in other parts of the world, in India. We had advisors in the US, in Canada, in the UK. So we were already working digitally using Zoom and other tools. So that wasn't so much of a shift for us. But I've seen a huge shift in those who were working in jobs that they didn't necessarily love. When they had to start doing it from their homes over the internet, suddenly it was like, why am I doing this? And that's what's kind of also triggered this great resignation, where people are now focusing on the work they love and they want to do, and having taken this opportunity, because there are the opportunities to work online, to be able to do it from their bedrooms, in their pajamas. And we've seen, obviously, the skill sets, the opportunities for upskilling to do that is now exponential. With learning platforms that are available, the remote working opportunities as freelancers and consultants to be able to take on these opportunities to do something that you love is now so easily accessible that that's the biggest shift that I've seen personally. And here we've seen in the UAE before, it was very difficult to work as a freelancer or have a part-time role. That has just opened up in the last 2 years. We now have freelance licenses and visas. Part-time working is coming in a big way. So things are changing massively here to support that.
Amazing. Let's take it to Zambia and let's hear the contrast from the Zambian landscape. Mwiche.
Hi, sorry about my camera, still trying to set it up, but I'll go ahead. Yes, what has changed on my end, we have over the past few years experienced a lot of formal job cuts, because of evaluations in the required skills versus, overall individual as well as organization performance. So there have been a lot of gaps in that area. And we have seen, obviously, the skill sets, the opportunities for upskilling to do something that you love But then on the other hand, we have seen how private enterprises are coming up slowly. Because I think of late, the pandemic also has awakened people to, survival mechanisms. So we have a lot of private enterprises coming up because people need to survive. They need to improve their skills. They need to, create work for themselves as well as other people. So people now do not just depend on formal arrangements. We have seen a shift to lots of hands-on skills in technology and so much more of, the vocation training.
Okay, you've just cut out there, Miche.
With, skills. I can give you a good example.
Yeah,
Hello?
Go ahead. Yep, you're back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Do I have to go back a bit, or did you lose me?
I think we give us the example, and I think it will sum it up.
Okay. So yes, we have seen a shift to lots of hands-on skills in technology and a lot of vocational training. People now want to have hands-on skills for their personal creation of work as well as to employ others. So the Ministry of Education right now favors vocational skills. Those are to do with applied arts, commerce, construction, trades, business and entrepreneurship. So for such vocational training skills, there's a lot of favor even from government in terms of, provision of bursaries and scholarships, unlike the way it used to be in the past. So that's what has changed now. A lot of people are coming up with, skills that can help them to survive.
Fantastic. Thanks, Miche. David, I'm hoping you're all set up now. Do you want to just introduce yourselves and then give us a quick perspective from your end?
So sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Brilliant.
Oh, thank you very much. As you were mentioning, I'm David. I'm originally from Benin. I'm currently joining this session from Japan, and I'm working at YGU Federation. So it's a fellowship program which brings young people from across the world to Japan and give them opportunity to experiment life working in company before finding the best path for their life. So it's kind of transitional organization training that we are offering to young people. Why we come to this point is because most of company will ask young people about experience. But if no one give them the chance, how will they get their experience? That's where everything started. And I think we are working on mainly regional revitalization, which involves sustainability and different aspects related to global issues. But mainly what I noticed recently, based on our experience, young people now focus on what can they do to contribute to society more than just making money. Because we have been interviewing young people recently until even today. People in renewable, someone is as engineer in renewable energy. I was surprised when he was telling us that I'm not certified being a renewable energy engineer. I want to do the real work. I want to impact society. That's why I went to study this skill, but I realized that I'm not using it. What I'm looking for now is opportunity to contribute to society. It's not just selling energy, selling and making money. So many young people are really trying to find something that I think which is changing the society today, something to contribute, how to contribute to the world. So on separate note, which is go to what my predecessor was saying, vocational skill building. That's something I've been working on recently back home in Benin. We provide IT web engineering skill for example, former And when young people finish, we give them opportunity to find job from Benin to wherever in the world. And I have some example. For example, someone stay in Benin working for a company in Netherlands and making money. But this couldn't be possible without this new experience that we all been facing recently because of the COVID. So that's my opinion, and I think I will come in with more insight. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. You have such a unique perspective because you're working across Japan and Africa at the same time, which is going to be fascinating for this discussion. So this brings us to this next question here. So thinking about the skills gaps that need to be addressed since the pandemic began, how can both job seekers and employers balance actual competencies of the job seeker with industry expectations, within industry expectations? So who would like to kickstart that one? Go for it, Hayden.
I'd just like to give, it's amazing when you read these questions beforehand and then you have contributions by everyone and how you want to modify it. But, just look at the word gap. What is a gap? In the past, gap and skills shortages and was based on geographical location. So now, if you really think about it, you can't really have a gap because with the digital world, if you need a skill, you can find it, just like we just mentioned before. So I think this question, there's a lot of risks. We all want to move into the blue society where you've got local employment, vocational training, you want to bring, you want to grow your own region, you want to grow the own people in your region. That's what we want to do. That's what our society needs to do. But where we are is that it's quite difficult as an employer to do that because you can get anyone's skills anyway. So it's the real, we're on a knife edge here from a job seeker employer perspective, because we've got the opportunity to really change the world. But what's happening, because it's a digital world and there are no such things as boundaries. I mean, we're all speaking from different time zones. We're having a conversation. We might as well be at work. We could be doing a strategy session at work for a business product. It doesn't really matter. So I think there's a risk in this one that there's such inequalities in society. And with the digital world, if you're digitally competent and you've got international skills or skills that are relevant, you can work anywhere. So what about the person that's local that doesn't have these skills? So I'm putting a question back to you. This is a very risky part of where we are in the world because it is going to create more inequality. It's just inevitable. He or she who's digitally advanced, that's got skill set that's easily can be used over the digital world, and that skill set is not geographically linked, it's going to increase inequality. So that's my view on this one.
Do the other panelists agree, disagree? Go on, John. You're on mute, sorry, John.
Sorry, folks. No, I'm with Hayden on this, and there's some really good news here, I think, and there's some really challenging news. So let's go with the good news first. The good news is that many professional bodies, including ours, are going down a much more of a competency-based approach. So the old language that said, isn't it good to get a diploma in a technical area? It's good in its own right, isn't it? And the world is my oyster. Yes, there's still an element of that, but actually what employers want is they want people that are oven ready. They want people with the soft skills as well as the technical skills. They want people that can apply themselves rather than just know the theory. So what we have found during the pandemic, there's been a lot of work in CILT in the UK around development of a competency framework. Now, it's being used largely within the UK, but that will include multinational companies. And what is coming out of that very strongly is that that is the tool that many employers want to use to assess their organizations and the capability of individuals in those organizations in terms of filling skills gaps. And I think that, again, the cat is out of the bag with these things. Competency framework is the way to go, because there's no point in having a whole load of accredited qualifications. You can become a chartered expert, brilliant, but actually there's a mixed match with the designation as you enter employment. Okay, so that is a challenge for all professional bodies, not just logistics and transport. That's across the piece. However, and this is now the bad news, okay, the skills gaps that we might think are there are not actually the ones there in reality. There are so many changes now in the skill sets required and a morphing of the skills and talents that employers need. So manufacturing and other sectors, we were all thinking as processors. A lot of those people would be process trained, right? But as we go digital, actually what we're looking for is the thinkers, the creators, the strategists, and those people have got to move, especially if they're being reskilled within an organization. And that's why I think the challenge is, it's not like throwing all the pieces of a jigsaw back onto the table and saying put it back together again and where are the gaps. This is actually the whole jigsaw's changed. You know, it's got bigger, it's got wider, it's perhaps a 3D one now, and the roles that you're now looking for are not the common language. I think the big challenge that we have to face, and I'm 100% with everyone on this call about digital is good and it's inclusive, but one of the things we are seeing is that people are absolutely zoomed out. And what that means is that they don't want to use that online method only for receiving training. So one of the challenges, if you are a learner that listens and absorbs information, you can cope with it. But if you're an active learner and you have to do and you have to touch and you thrive for human contact, so learning is an encounter, not just absorption of knowledge, you're going to really struggle with being in the online world. And I really think that we mustn't leave behind those active learners and those creative people. That would be my plea.
Blended approach to learning. I like that. Vicky, you're nodding. Go ahead. What do you want to add?
I think Hayden and John live rent-free in my head. So what I was going to say is just going back to that, my earlier point about flexibility and adaptability. So it's not a one-size-fits-all straitjacket type of approach that we're looking at now. It's a hybrid, right? And hybrid means it's a little of what you had before and then tweak it and then make it something else. So this is in essence what we're dealing with. And so how do we communicate? This is what I'm just thinking with the advent of the pandemic and everything that, you know, the challenges that came along with it. How do you communicate that to your workforce? And I'm throwing this back again to the panel to say, how do you say in terms of the skills gaps that we're speaking about, you know, remote work culture? We're not used to that. I'm used to a 9 to 5. I pack my lunch in the morning. I get in my car. I drive to the office 5 o'clock. I come back. This is the life that I've been accustomed to. And now you tell me that I've got to sit in front of a computer, no human contact, try to figure things out, which, you know, ordinarily would be very easy to do if I was in my own space. How do you communicate all of that? So now there's a hybrid role that comes up. Now you need people that are comfortable working in the remote space and can still do that which they used to do and a little extra. So really that flexibility and adaptability is I think where the, you know, quagmire of all of this is.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That is a really good question, because everybody got thrown into this new world of work at the same time. No one had a head start. So that's a great question. How do you communicate this? So here, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like that, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really about conveying this new culture, and it's a new culture that typically we would have transitioned to slowly and got people comfortable with, but now we've just thrown them in the deep end. And I don't know what the answer to your question is, and I'd love to get everybody else's view on this, because I mean, I work with a very small team. We already had a very hybrid working kind of culture, and but the key thing that I've seen is because of the way that we work, people typically have this time to be able to upskill. They have time to themselves. They have time to be able to switch off when they need to and work when they need to, as long as they're getting their task done. And so there was never this corporate style of retribution or getting a slap on the wrist for not completing anything. It was very much a let's work collaboratively. When you get stuck, let's have a meeting. Let's see how we can support each other. But the culture, how that works from a corporate perspective, that's a minefield to me, and I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I'd love to know, because it's something I'm sure we're going to encounter more of as we move forward.
What are your thoughts, David?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. I really like the cultural aspect that Zai raised up, because if you think about a country like Japan, the culture is very unique. And before pandemic, no one would have thought about Japanese people, company, corporate, accepting employees working from home. That won't be really possible, But it's been a month, for example, I've been working from home always, because this new situation show people how to adapt themselves to the working culture. And if country like Japan is trying to make this possible, I think for people like us living in Japan, we think this is very big change. And yeah, it will be challenging for the point, like the socialization aspect of it, because when you work from home, sometimes you have to face some health issues. To be honest, you will be sitting in the chair all the day. Sometimes I don't even see the break, because there is a meeting here, there is a meeting there, and even the lunchtime, you don't see it pass, because you keep working and you keep working because you are not moving, And I think that's one thing we have to really think about, like how this new habit could be affecting people health issue, maybe somehow. That's one point. But then the communication between employees, the socialization in the working environment is also some point that I believe could be thought about. So for me, it is interesting. It has both sides, risk and opportunities. So we just need to think about the hybrid method. Like some company here, we're thinking 2 days or 3 days in office and then 2 days at home. So this kind of way will be interesting more than just using one aspect of it. So that's some opinion I want to give. Yes, thank you.
David. Yeah, no, that's absolutely valuable. Thank you. Wiche, do you have a comment on what David is saying, or any of the other panelists?
Not really. I just wanted to respond to the question.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Yes. So yeah, of course, the issue of the skills gaps. So I'm going to give you a scenario of what's happening to, let's say, people in government right now. I'm going to cite my own, department. I'm a social worker by training. And so when it all began, I knew certain things. I was confined to a certain job description. But then over time, because things are changing, we are seeing, issues of the wage freeze coming in, in a situation where the, skills gaps have been identified, but the government is not employing any more people. What happens? So in my own case, we
Yeah, we've lost you.
Had a lot of, coaching and within our.
Okay, Wiche, sounds like you might be having connectivity issues.
And then, maybe, we have gained a lot of skillments. Hello?
Hi. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so I'm talking about the issue of the wage freeze.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not.
Okay, sorry, Mwiche, it seems like your connection is not stable at the moment. I'm just going to mute you, and while you hopefully get that sorted. Christian, do you want to come in at this point?
Sure, yeah.
The human resource that's already available.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of good points raised. Going back to the, I guess, the original question and some areas that everyone touched on is, I think from my point of view, when we're discussing a skills gap, there's also, you know, a skills opportunity there. Off the back of things like COP26, again, and these kind of conversations which we're having today, a topic that naturally comes up is young people. And I feel like there's maybe not enough being done to encourage that. Okay, where do we get these skills from? Well, a lot of young people already have them. You know, they've grown up with this technology, you know, FaceTiming your friends, Zoom, like this is all pretty standard stuff for a lot of people. So let's get them involved more. I think there's a lot of discussion about young people are, you know, that's what's needed, that's the next steps, that's how we move on. But I know I've been to a lot of events where that's the conversation. But I might be the only young person, you know, in terms of the actual room itself, which, you know, can be an issue. And so I think for companies that are looking to involve young people, I think it needs to be more than just a talk, and it needs to, you need to see it more. You know, there are those skills out there in terms of, you know, I know John and Hayden touched on it a bit. I think Vicky did as well, the gap of, okay, if you're looking to upskill, what do you do if you recruit that talent from far away? You know, how do you keep that talent also, you know, local? And that's something that I think, again, that's where the opportunities are. You know, you have these people coming in with a different set of skills to maybe the senior management. So things like mentor programs, which are a skill that I don't think companies use enough, where maybe you buddy someone in senior management with someone who might be relatively new to the business, and they share skills. Everyone's got a different skill set, and more now, you know, we're trying to teach people, oh, you can do that, but why don't we have, you know, each other share skills and let people learn together? I think now that's a real opportunity, and if you are half the world away, Zoom can enable that as well.
That's a really interesting point. I was just picturing senior management and the newbie who's, you know, in the office having a sort of buddy system where they share skills. I think that takes us back to creating a new culture in an organization, because sure, I think there are some individuals that would be quite open to doing something like that. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot that both sides can learn from each other. But when you talk about corporate structure, that's an interesting area to sort of unpick and see how that would actually work in reality. But great point.
That's where it's as part of this kind of like new world we're in.
Yeah,
it's a really good opportunity, and it's a really good question from the employee side of things to ask that question. And you know, if there's an issue there, you know, it's not actually affecting the hierarchy, it's just looking to develop relationships and share those skills. So that's when you maybe ask the question, why aren't we willing to have this conversation?
No, great point. Thanks, Christian. So the green agenda is actually becoming more and more prominent in the vocabulary of organizations today. So what does this look like from your perspectives, and how can employers integrate the concept of sustainability in a meaningful way, in, you know, from your point of view? Zahir, would you like to kickstart this one?
Yeah, I think this is something that is very close to my heart, and something that I've been exploring for many years and trying to educate startups on, individuals on, you know, bringing in this mindful element of, you know, we have just one planet, it's our responsibility. And I love I think it's a South American proverb that says, you know, we don't inherit the world from our ancestors, but we borrow it from the next generation, our children, our grandchildren. And, you know, taking that stewardship into everything that we do, that, you know, it's one planet, we need to look after it. And everything down to, you know, the smallest detail. So we as a company, for example, are completely paperless. That was the first initiative that we took. And part of the reason I took that was because I'm super disorganized with paperwork. So having, you know, everything on an iPad or a laptop or whatever made it super simple to take such a small initiative, something that we saw as critical. And it really is about starting small. What is the areas, you know, working remotely a few days a week, we can encourage our employees to produce less CO2 emissions by driving to work by staying at home instead of driving to work. There's so many small things that we can do that can encourage our employees first to take a stance, and then this automatically starts to transition into the products that we produce, the services that we deliver, the way that people perceive us as companies. So it all starts, you know, with us. We have to take that first step. And I could talk all day about just that, but I think we all have to start to take that responsibility first.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Hayden, do you want to add to that?
Oh, okay. I was muted there. You know, I agree completely. But there's a caveat, you know, for sustainability, and it's my occupation, and I studied it, and I remember when I was studying sustainability, there was the question at the beginning of the course was, if you had $1, what would you do with it? And then you go through this whole process and you get to the end and it's okay, so where are you going to spend your dollar? You know, and so with this climate change and sustainability, people keep forgetting that sustainability is contextual. You know, in Africa and most parts of Africa, your biggest sustainability issue is you know, women education. You know, and so you have to say, you know, yes, you can recycle and you can put renewable energy panels on your wall, on your roofs, but sustainability is contextual. So we have to get this through the education system, through the business section. If you really want to make a difference, where are you going to make the difference? And it's a very, you know, I'm a flat out environmentalist, you know, but sitting here in southern part of Africa, you look at the real big issues. You know, how are we going to solve those issues? It's women education. You know, it's young girl education, preschool education. You know, it's that will solve our biggest issues. You know, so these are the things that we have to get into education system. It has to be into the business world. It has to get into society. What is it that's contextual for you? Yeah.
I know that this is your world, Vicky. So what would you like to say to Hayden to that?
And I'm actually glad that I did listen to Hayden. Let me switch my camera off. I think maybe when I speak it. I'm glad that I did listen to Hayden and Zahir first, and you know, they've sort of drawn out what my point is, which is generally how many of us, and really let's bring it here, how many organizations in Africa, because Hayden highlights that this is contextual, how many organizations in Africa are keeping tabs on, you know, the effects of climate change, the effects of or maybe even just creating green skills positions in the organizations? Do they even understand what that is? And if they are, what practical steps have they taken or continue to take, if they are doing it, to align with the evidence of their findings? So once we answer that, then it becomes clear as day that all these green skills roles that we're speaking about, your renewable energy engineer, your urban farmer, and so on and so forth, those are the things that will become clear as day to us that we really now need, and they become an urgent call to action. But currently, that's not the urgent call to action. We have, as far as we're concerned, we've got bigger issues right now. But I suppose we then move away from the fact that we are worrying about all these other issues, which to me, I think are secondary, because we won't have a world to live in if we don't take this seriously. So again, it goes back to the awareness, the education. For me, it's about mindset and just probably maybe bringing it closer to home for people to understand, you know, from what Hayden is saying, the contextual aspect of it and also its importance.
Yeah, it definitely has different meanings across the world. John, would you like to comment just from your perspective, because your organization is global. So how is this panning out?
Yes, so obviously we work in all continents of the world. So we've got obviously UK, Ireland, countries in Europe, but we've also got around 50 to 60% of African countries involved in this debate. I think there's two angles to take here. One is around articulating and influencing policy. So as CILT, we often work with governments and bring together the thought capacity of our members. We're not a lobbying organisation, but I think we'd all agree that this One Planet responsibility is not a lobby matter. It's an urgent matter, and it's not political. It's actually matter of fact. So being able to bring new ideas, suggestions around how to reduce greenhouse gas and carbon footprint through strategic transport measures is one way that organisations like ours can support. I think the flip side of this is we all talk about corporate social responsibility and around targets. And I think there's still a bit of a mindset that because the word corporate is there, everyone thinks that's big companies and big polluters and big energy consumers. But I think if we added together all the cumulative impact of small medium enterprises across the world and micro businesses that might not employ that many people but cause a lot of travel and movement, we'd actually find that that's where the carbon challenge might sit. Quite deliberately, CILT has allowed or encouraged during COVID some solutions. So our Women in Logistics and Transport organisation, which is a forum, have set up a global capacity building centre. And one of their first programs that they have developed is an introduction to green sustainability, specifically for, well, it's for men as well, but it is targeted at women business leaders and small to medium sized business owners that at the moment they just want to get their head around it. Now it is within a transport and logistics context rather than a wider context. But the important thing is they're all challenged to do their own mini sustainability report for their organization, even if there's only two of them, you know, two people running the organization. So I think that there's a real opportunity here around the small medium enterprise stuff. Picking up on Christian's point, I 100% agree with you, Christian, and Mwishi about mentoring and the role of mentoring. And this, my view is that mentoring isn't just fluffy, you know, mentoring is around doing it with a real purpose. So trying to look at your business and review your business critically in terms of its carbon footprint and use almost a technical mentor for that purpose is absolutely essential, and it's critical to our business strategy.
Great. Actually, Christian, so Christian, you were nominated for the Net Zero Apprenticeship Awards, weren't you? So, you know, from your perspective, you know, what's the context? What's the important context here?
Yeah, I think for myself, I'm aware that in the UK, you know, in Scotland where we are, we come from a very privileged point of view where we can focus on, okay, let's look at carbon reduction as the key part of the sustainable issue. You know, these are the things that, you know, maybe we're prioritizing where elsewhere, you know, it isn't the top of the priority list. So I'm aware it's a really privileged position to be in, but it's still an important thing that we need to look at. So for us, what we've really found is it's been about making changes that are obtainable. You know, John mentioned targets, and that has been a real theme of, you know, agendas for 2030, 2045 or 2050, which set out goals for businesses to achieve, which for some just based on cost alone, aren't doable, you know, aren't realistic targets. So what we've been doing is we've been trying to work with SMEs and including ourselves and thinking, okay, how can we make these goals achievable? And it's different for every business. It's different for, you know, every person. And, you know, carbon emissions is one that we've spent a lot of time on. But even for ourselves, 3 years ago, we didn't have a sustainability department. We were lucky that we had directors in the business that believed in an idea, and I work alongside my colleague Sam Grace, who is far smarter than I am and works out how we can make all these products that we kind of design and think up and dream up that we like to deliver come to life. And through that, you know, we now do carbon reporting for SMEs in an obtainable way. You know, there's no, in the UK, we've got SECAR, Streamlined Energy Carbon Reporting, which is really for the larger businesses. And that is a government compliance, you know, they have to do that. But there's nothing for SMEs right now, but there's still the same pressures of, you know, are you offering green alternatives? Are you carbon reduction? What are your goals? How are you going to achieve this? So for us, I think from a UK standpoint, it's a privileged point to be in, but it's still a big issue that needs addressed. And we're just trying to play our role in that as kind of transparently as we can, because we're, you know, different cities, different businesses. The difference between a farm to, you know, a shopping centre in terms of both big energy users, both carbon footprints, but the requirements and the needs and the capable changes are really different. And so that's why it's an exciting thing to be a part of, because every day is different. And every day is a learning day as well. So that's always fun too. So it's really interesting.
Great, thanks for that, Christian. David, what's the context in Japan when it comes to the green agenda?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think what I've noticed recently is the fact that, you know, before corporate use the CSR to support non-profit to contribute to sustainability, right? But now things have been changing a bit, because now companies are encouraging what we call entrepreneurship, like helping young people to grow within the company as entrepreneurs. And our company have this habit. Every year, they will ask employees to go for social business challenge. And the winner will be tackling, for example, some specific issue, for example, grain-related issue or poverty-related issues. And then the company will be investing in those kind of funds. So I believe social entrepreneurship is one of the approach people are using now, like tackling clear issue within the society and support whoever have this passion to solve the problem. For example, if you think about our division called our GU Federation, where we bring young people from across the world, the reason for creating this division was not to make money, but the company is investing in that division to bring talent, young people who want to contribute to society and give them the opportunity to solve social problems. So that's what we've been doing. So they don't use the money anymore. Like, of course, they will be supporting some non-profit or other organization to contribute to those social issues, but they currently focusing more on finding people who have passion in that and invest in them and let them develop something to contribute to social issues. I don't know if that approach makes sense, but for me, I believe that's one of the best way actually to tackle those issues, because it creates a sustainable way of solving our society problem. Because when this entrepreneur use that money to create something that can keep making money while solving the problem, I believe that will be definitively contributing as much as possible. That's the approach we.
That makes a lot of sense, David. That absolutely makes a lot of sense. I mean, let's continue with this theme of young people, because we know by supporting them within the workplace, we actually enable them not only to add value in their current roles, but to become leaders of the future. So are there new opportunities for businesses and job seekers alike to consider that? and address these gaps? For example, are companies willing to change their current ways of working and develop these green skills in their employees? Who would like to start that one? Go on, Christian.
Okay. I guess I've kind of touched on it, but 3 years ago, we've worked in energy for over 22 years now, but about 3 years ago, the decisions were made. We had some ideas, a few of us in the business, and we took those to the directors, and they said, we're happy for you to do that. And I feel like we were really lucky to kind of maybe be a little bit ahead of the curve in that willingness to let's have a go at this. Let's start to think, how can we do more? And through that, we've been really fortunate to get some nominations for some awards and stuff, which is lovely. But what we've been able to do is see and learn from our own experiences that there are real opportunities there. We are a smaller business, and there are some massive businesses out there that have huge opportunity to really give a floor to people. I think it's been mentioned on this call, people are coming out of uni. I know David mentioned it. There's a lot of young people who are thinking, okay, I've got skills, but I don't just want to work to become a CEO one day. I actually want to work and see the kind of fruits of my labours and have that impact on my community or wider society as well. And I think some of the big businesses out there have such an important role to play in enabling that and allowing these really intelligent young people who have these amazing ideas, and they just need backing. They just need a floor and the opportunities to use those skills. And I think that the education system maybe doesn't enable people to know how to translate those skills into getting a job. So I think if we can, that maybe there's a gap there. How do we educate people in? You've got some amazing ideas. You've got the know-how. You need to find someone who can back that up. And how do we, enable those conversations as well?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Hayden, go ahead.
That's we always, before and after this, we will always talk about how to make the biggest difference, and the theme is coming through here today. Young people, digital divide, inequality, so how do you solve it? And I just think obviously internal business, you can obviously give mentoring and scholarships, or just give people opportunity to learn, and then just help them with aptitude and attitude, because confidence and education develop those two. But from a bigger picture perspective, just look at things from like an architect, from a big picture, and then the nitty-gritty details. So how can the more developed North help the developing countries? We could give those opportunities. You could give opportunities for people to develop attitude, the right attitudes and the right aptitudes, the right EQ. And I think it's a real it's a sweet spot of trying to solve this issue, plus get green skills, plus bring people out of desperation, plus make a difference.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about some of the programs that we have here in the UK that are, that are well funded, and they're delivered for UK SMEs to be able to, cover those gaps. If you need to be more digital, if you're trying to be, to keep up with digital transformation technologies in your business, come, we'll teach you how to do that. You want to be more inclusive, if you want to be more green. And you're absolutely right. It's sort of a benefit sort of awarded to us over here. And it's about thinking about how we can make that more widely accessible on a global scale. And that maybe perhaps that's tied into funding mechanisms, right? Because funding mechanisms will have specific areas, regions that they're mandated to look after. That's a really good point, Hayden. David, do you want to come in on that one?
Can you hear me? Yes, of course. I think we are on the same line with that. I'm really positive about that approach. Mainly, young people are the future. If we consider that, then giving them opportunity to design the future that they aim to is a really great thing. And thinking about that, I think to make that happen, I think they need to take the experience based on what have been happening in the world, like what didn't work until now, and how do we see the future. So I think based on what I learned, even mainly when we are recruiting here in Japan, because we are a recruitment company mainly, company used to ask about the skills, which is one of the key things, but they continue asking beyond the skill, what is your passion? What's your passion? And the passion means mostly to those companies, what kind of social issue this employee would like to tackle in life. Not just, I want to join the company to make money, but I want to join the company, but separately, this is my passion. This is what I want to work on. But to make those passions become reality is what you have been talking about, finding opportunity of a mechanism, financing or supporting those kind of employees' ideas separately and make them contribute to the society while working with the company. I think that will be a perfect scenario from my perspective.
Thanks, David. Go ahead, John. I know you've got a good perspective on this one.
Yeah, thank you. I'm with David on this. One of the challenges here is, whilst I think we are all fairly united about what kind of programs and the way to deliver them, you know, how that needs to change, ongoing sustainability seems to be a problem. So we have a project running at the moment in South Africa. It is to train and support over 900 women to be business owners in the transport sector, to be better and more effective managers and leaders, and that's where our training courses come in, and also to support women truck drivers into the sector. Now, you might think, well, that's really good, and it's got mentoring and all the things that we've all been talking about in it, but it is US government funded. It's for 3 years. And the challenge here is where you've got those successful bids and it's bid after bid after bid, how does that actually long-term support countries? Particularly, we've got our African friends on today, but I can replicate this in places like Bangladesh. I can replicate the same story in South America. How do we actually approach this whole learning agenda in a much more sustainable way? Now, the one thing we have found, and I'm sorry to go back to the mentoring theme, is that a lot of people are far more willing to give back to younger people than perhaps we give credit for. There might be a view that you need a consultant fee and we need lots of money. When we went out to the South African market, we asked our members in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in Botswana, in Namibia and South Africa, if they would like to take on a young person under their wing and nurture their management, their soft skills and their technical skills. We ended up with about 40 leading professionals saying, yes, please, within the space of 3 weeks. And they said, because I'm motivated to give back to my profession. So I think there's a bit of a hidden economy here, which is that people really, really do want to give back. I actually have 5 of those women. I am mentoring them here from the UK. They have no problem with that. They like the fact it's an international link. So I think we've talked about digital, bringing it full circle. This does open up a global mentoring approach. And I think there's lots of latent skill there that can actually help people be more useful in the workplace, help them get over their skills gaps. And actually, that's a quick win. If we can harness that somehow and put it in a bottle and make it work for countries where, you know, the exchange rate is not good, access to funding is very competitive. If we could try and just capture that a little bit more creatively, I think we'd be in a different place if we had this discussion in 5 years' time.
Well, I look forward to the panel in 5 years' time, and this is being recorded, John, remember that. And I want to throw this at Vicky, actually, because you bring up, John, you bring up really, those are some gems that you're saying right there in terms of harnessing the local talent that's already there, the local creativity, the local willingness of people to get involved in some of these local initiatives. So Vicky, how do you see this playing out? Is there enough of this collaboration or joined up thinking going on in Zimbabwe?
Well, what I can say is, well, it's never enough. Mentorship is something that we need a lot of, so it's never enough. But we certainly are seeing a lot of collaboration coming in, especially again with is mentoring virtually. And that's really, really important, because it's not always easy to get funding into the country, but there are low cost and effective ways of getting mentoring across. And this is to try and find mentors for our girls who engineering and things like that, things that we don't, careers that we don't already have here, homegrown in Africa. And so we try to find people outside of the continent that are doing this, that are able to then, mentor our girls and sort of help them along their journey. So I do agree with John. There's a lot of this happening, but not happening at the scale at which it needs to happen. And so I agree with you, John. We need to harness this. We need to put it in a bottle. I don't know how we can do this, but there needs to be serious synergies created, and probably even, proper interventions, like serious interventions that can be put together to ensure that this does happen. So yes, I agree with you.
Zahir, any comments on that?
No, I really like the broad perspective of the panel here, and I totally agree with the perspective of mentoring. We use it as an effective tool. Obviously, you've seen what we've done with entrepreneurship and how we use mentors to actually deliver the value, because I think taking the education forward is on one hand, it's part of the education system's responsibility. On the second, it's all of us. Everybody here today is a thought leader or aspiring thought leader that has so much value to give, and all the compound effect of all of your experiences that can transition and provide that education that everybody needs to thrive in the world as it emerges. So it's panels like this and encouraging our employees, the young, to actually take time out to listen to things like this, to actually provide them the opportunities and time in their day to take out to attend events like this, which can just broaden their horizons. So education is not all about reading books. As we know, all of us have learned from our daily experiences and our interactions in the world, and it's thought leaders that I've learned from that have brought me to where I am, and it's the reason why every one of you here is called to speak on a panel, because you've shown that tenacity, the resilience, the maturity to give that wide range of knowledge, and this is going to transition into the future. So.
And this is a lovely segue into, this focus on the education system. So if each of you could change the curriculum in one small way, if you could influence curriculum, what would you want the education system to be actually handing over to young people in order to basically support them in ways that we've talked about today? So Christian, I'll start with you. What would you want to see happen differently in the education system?
It's a bit of a curveball, but I suppose it does tie back in. It's something that I talk about quite a lot with colleagues in other businesses, and it's the lack of education around understanding bills, payments and bills, and people who one day go to run a company or work in finance, or just your own home bills, energy bills, these sorts of things. I don't think there's any education on that at all really in schools, or at least there wasn't a few years ago. So I think that's something that's really important, and that is a life skill which then allows people to be more prepared for when you do go into the world of work, you do have your first home, because how do you even begin to measure energy and reduce your carbon if you don't even understand what a pence per kilowatt, you know, how the way that we charge energy, if you can't understand it, how do you even begin to impact it? And that's a real life skill that I just don't think there's enough education around.
Absolutely. Life skills. I like that. Hayden, what would you like to see different in the education system?
Cause and effect. It's not something that's taught very well. So what Christian's just said is quite correct. You know, if I do this, what is the impact on that? So yes, technical skills is absolutely important, digital skills, but it's the impact of any decision and what are the consequences. And that's the kind of thinking that should be in the education system. And those are the kind of thought processes that employers, I think, will look for. That was mentioned earlier by John. It's just what type of people you're hiring and how do they think? So that's I think that needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. That's a great answer. David.
Yes.
What would be your input here?
Good. Thank you so much. I think regarding education, I will think about collaboration between corporate and university, because most of people today, when you look at the job market, around more than 70% of people will do the job that they didn't, which is completely different from their background. They just want to do the work, and mostly we don't realize that, but people spend all their life studying something, and at the end of the day, they do something else. It means there is a problem. So there is a miscommunication between corporate and university, which is something I think we need to fix. If not, we will waste people's time studying something but coming to corporate doing something else, which is that's my main opinion.
I mean, we're seeing this growth in corporate MBAs now, aren't we? Where we're actually the private sector is now running MBAs rather than and competing actually pretty well with academic institutions. John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Gamu. I mean, just picking up on what David said, I think we need much smarter approaches to internships. We are lucky enough to be involved in some pilots where the internship offer is actually once you've graduated. So rather than it be sandwich experience within a course, this is people that have graduated, they've got masters, but as of yet no job. They want to be brought on board in some format for a full-time placement for 3 to 6 months. We are seeing a marked difference in their capability compared to people at the sort of first and second years. And that kind of more creative approach, I think, is one that we need to seriously think about. Also, I think I'm going to be very controversial now and say that the whole education system needs to be much more creative about how it assesses people. Because if it assesses by exam and it assesses knowledge and memory and understanding in a very two-dimensional way, what about those people that are digital, that learn rapidly but in a bite-sized way? The examination system just alien to them. So I think we absolutely have to be assessing people in the way that they learn, and therefore, the school system needs looking at, but actually the way that we track people when they join a company, looking at successes through projects, through bite-sized assessment is far more valuable, I think, than looking for those kind of big, bold accolades that historically people have gone for. Yes, there's a role for them, but actually many more people are going to benefit from more of a competency-based approach.
Yeah, love that answer. Very comprehensive. Thanks, John. Zahir.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Christian. Go on, Christian. Go on. Go ahead.
I just really quickly wanted to say, anyone who's involved in the UK who might not be aware, there is a program called the Graduate Apprenticeship Program, which lets people study and earn full degrees whilst working full time. Just off the back of what John said, it's actually something that I'm doing myself. I wasn't going to go to uni based on school assessments, but then using qualifications you've earned and work experience, you can then enter the program later on in your career. But it still gives people a really good opportunity to earn that degree. Hopefully that's something that we'll see more of internationally. So yeah, it's called the GA program, or Graduate Apprentice. Just worth looking at if anyone's interested.
Fantastic. I think we've got somebody in the audience asking for you to share the details in the chat, please, Christian. Thank you. Zahir, any last comments on the application? Yes.
I think when I think back to what was missing from when I was studying many years ago, even though I consider myself a lifelong learner, the thing that I was never taught to learn, or never taught, was how to learn. And I still see that's missing, especially in the British education system. I see it in the Swiss system and some of the other systems. The theory of knowledge, which is something we were never taught in the British system. So that's one. But also, I think some of the more mystical kind of stuff, like, and I'm not talking about witchcraft and wizardry here, but I'm talking about mindfulness, and some of the stuff that David brought in, the Japanese culture, like Ikigai and Kaizen methodologies and stuff. I think that's completely missing. And while we are seeing people now transition to this more meaningful work and following and thinking about impact, it's not necessarily coming from the education system, it's coming from their interaction with the world. So not everybody is getting this. So those are the things I would change.
Brilliant input. Vicky, tell us about your views.
And I'm just glad that everybody's spoken before I have, because then they've pretty much summed up what I want to say, and which is understanding the world of work, right? Because the world of work has adapted, quite a lot. And what has happened is it's adapting at, lightning speed, but the education system is not meeting that energy. It's not matching that speed. So not to focus though on the challenges, but really just amending, updating the curriculum. And I say this sitting just like Hayden in the southern part of Africa, just to reflect what is happening globally is enough to get young, women and girls to be confident in what they're learning about, what are the opportunities that are available to them. And once they have those opportunities, do they feel confident with the skills that they've acquired? And once that happens, they are able to pursue those, opportunities. But if we don't do this, then we're getting the education bit wrong. So essentially, that's what everybody on the call is saying, is to say we need to understand that it's our interaction with life, not necessarily our interaction with the education system, that needs a complete overhaul.
I like that. Wiche, hopefully your mic is working okay. Any last thoughts? If you were to change the education system, what would you ask to be changed? What would your contribution be? Okay, she's having internet connectivity issues. That's okay. Well, this has been such an interesting discussion. It's a pity we've only had 90 minutes, but we are going to be drawing to a close. But before we do so, we've got about 5 minutes left. If anyone has any burning questions that you might want to ask the panelists, or if there are any, and then after that, if there's any final comments from the panelists. No questions? Okay, it doesn't seem like we have any questions. Honestly, this was such a comprehensive talk. It's a wonder we managed to squeeze in so much in such a short space of time. But I'm sure this is a conversation that we will carry on, amongst us, because what I'd like to actually do is pull together some of the key strands of this. Because one of the purposes of the Business Show forums is that when we have a discussion like this, why don't we look at practically what sort of projects or initiatives we can launch out of some of the common themes that we've discussed here today, so that it becomes something meaningful and we're actually actively working towards something. So I look forward to touching base with all of you afterwards. with a summary of what we talked about today. But let me just say, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the forum today. You've all been wonderful. And what a spectrum of perspectives, knowledge, and just expertise. It's been brilliant. And I'm sure everybody who's watching and who'll be watching this back will feel the same way. So thank you, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Gamu.
It's been great.
Thank you so much for having us.
No, thank you. Okay, I believe we're done. Unless there are any final comments, I think we've done it.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Louise. I know you've got another one in 3 minutes. So.
Yeah. I was like, hurry up, Gamu. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Hello. Yeah, sorry.
Hi,
I
Michael.
wanted to reach out to Christian. He dropped his link. But I can't message you, so I don't know.
Let me have a look.
Oh, there you are.
Quickly. Okay, I will put another one in the chat quickly and see if that works.
Actually, if you because we haven't all met, if you want to put in your LinkedIn details in the chat, that's absolutely great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'll just drop my LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll connect with you, Michael, if you want to do that. That's great.
Yeah. So let me just quickly send it to you.
Brilliant.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. If you want to save the chat, just click on the 3 little dots at the bottom of your chat, and you'll be able to save chat. And then you can, instead of going one by one through the links, okay? Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Speak to you all soon. All the best. Bye.